The evening began with a strange quiet that felt heavier than usual. Daniel Carter stood in the kitchen holding his phone, watching the clock change minutes. The house smelled of dinner and laundry soap, yet something felt off. He did not know why, but his chest felt tight, like a warning he could not name. Daniel was 36, a widower living in a quiet suburb outside Boston. His world revolved around his daughter Lily. She was 8, bright, curious, and still healing in her own way. Since her mother died, Daniel built his life around schedules, safety, and calm. Emotions were something he kept locked away. Emily Walker came into their lives a year ago. She was hired as a babysitter at first, but she was different from the others. She was older, steady, and calm. She spoke softly and listened carefully. Lily trusted her quickly, which surprised Daniel. Trust had been hard for both of them. Emily arrived every afternoon with the same gentle smile. She helped Lily with homework, cooked simple meals, and filled the house with a warmth Daniel thought was gone forever. He noticed the small things, the way Emily remembered Lily's favorite stories, the way she hummed while cleaning, the way the house no longer echoed at night. Daniel never planned to feel anything more than gratitude. He told himself Emily was part of the routine, nothing else, but routines can change without warning. One evening, Daniel came home early from work. The sky was gray and rain tapped softly against the windows. He heard laughter before he opened the door. Lily was in the living room, sitting beside Emily, both of them covered in blankets, watching an old movie. Lily looked happy, safe, and that sight hit Daniel harder than expected. Emily looked up and smiled. Her smile always felt too personal, too warm. Daniel nodded and went to the kitchen, trying to ignore the feeling building in his chest. After Lily went to bed, Emily stayed to clean up. Daniel offered her tea, something he started doing without thinking. They sat at opposite sides of the kitchen table. The space between them felt smaller than it should have been. They talked about simple things, Lily's school project, the weather, traffic, but then Emily mentioned her studies. She talked about her degree, her plans, her hope to move to a bigger city, maybe Chicago or Seattle. Daniel listened quietly, feeling something twist inside him. He realized then how little he knew about Emily's life outside his home. She was not just someone who cared for his child. She had her own future, her own dreams, and suddenly the thought of her leaving felt unbearable. Daniel excused himself early that night, telling her he was tired, but sleep did not come. Memories flooded his mind, loss, fear, the promise he made to himself to never feel this way again. The next few days passed quickly. Work was busy, Lily had school events, but Daniel noticed Emily more than ever, her quiet strength, her patience, the way she avoided eye contact sometimes, like she was holding something back. Then came the phone call. Daniel was walking down the hallway when he heard Emily's voice from the porch. The door was slightly open. He did not mean to listen, but her words stopped him cold. She spoke softly, saying she had received an offer, a full-time position, better pay, a new city, a chance she could not ignore. She said she was unsure, that leaving felt wrong, but staying felt dangerous. Daniel stepped back before she noticed him, his heart racing, his mind spinning. The house suddenly felt too quiet again, just like before. That night, Daniel barely spoke. Emily sensed something was wrong, but she did not ask. Lily hugged him goodnight, unaware of the storm building around her. After everyone was asleep, Daniel sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the same spot where Emily sat every night. He realized how much space she had filled in his life without him noticing. He thought about Lily, how she would react, how another goodbye might hurt her. He thought about himself, how he had been surviving, not living. For the first time in years, Daniel admitted the truth to himself. He cared about Emily, deeply, and pretending otherwise would only make the loss worse. The next morning, Emily arrived as usual, smiling, carrying her bag, acting normal, but Daniel saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her smile faded when she thought no one was watching. He knew then that silence was no longer safe, that waiting would only turn into regret. Something had to be said, even if it changed everything. As Daniel watched Emily help Lily tie her shoes before school, he understood that choices were coming, and once spoken, words could not be taken back. Part 1 ended not with a decision, but with a realization that love sometimes begins quietly, and fear always follows close behind. The evening arrived faster than Daniel expected, the air crisp with the first hints of winter, and the house felt different, heavier, almost waiting for something to happen. He waited in the living room, unsure how to start. Unsure if Emily even knew how close they were to crossing a line that could not be uncrossed. Lily was asleep upstairs, her soft breathing a small comfort, but also a reminder that decisions had to be made carefully. Emily came down the stairs carrying a small stack of laundry, her movements calm, her face soft and gentle, but Daniel noticed the tension in her shoulders, the careful way she avoided looking directly at him, and he knew she sensed what he had been holding inside. He gestured toward the sofa, and she sat slowly, smoothing her skirt, and for a long moment, neither spoke. the silence stretching like a fragile thread that could snap with a single word. Daniel began carefully, speaking in the low tone he always used when he wanted honesty to come first. He talked about Lily, about how much she had grown with Emily's help, how much laughter had returned to the house, how Emily's presence had made their home feel alive again, and he did not pause. He let the words flow, even when his chest tightened and his hands trembled slightly. Emily listened quietly, her fingers folded in her lap, her eyes soft, a mixture of warmth and sadness. She knew what was coming, or at least she suspected, because she had felt it too, that quiet pull between them, that unspoken tension that had been building for months. She wanted to deny it, to tell herself she was imagining things, but her heart refused, and so she stayed, listening. Daniel shifted slightly, looking down at his hands, thinking about all the nights he had spent alone, wondering if opening his heart again was foolish, and then finally he said it, carefully, gently, but with firmness he could not hide. He told her he could no longer pretend, that he felt more than gratitude, that he had come to care deeply for her, more than he had realized, more than he should allow himself to admit. Emily's eyes widened slightly, but she did not look away. She let him speak, letting the words settle between them. The room seemed smaller, warmer, more intimate. She knew this moment would change everything, and she felt the same. She admitted quietly that she had felt it too, that she had tried to bury it because her dreams were pulling her in another direction, and because she did not want to hurt Lily, or Daniel, or herself. Daniel nodded, understanding completely, his heart pounding, because hearing her admit the same thing he had been feeling made everything real and terrifying. He realized how fragile this was, how quickly it could shatter if either of them stepped wrong, and so he spoke the words he had been rehearsing for nights without success. He told her she had to choose. Not in a cruel way, not as an ultimatum, but honestly. He said she had to choose between running from what felt real or staying and seeing where it could lead. He told her he would never ask her to give up her dreams, that he would never force her, but he could no longer pretend that feelings did not exist, and he could no longer hide from the fact that he wanted her in their lives, not just as a babysitter, but as someone who mattered. Emily remained still, absorbing the weight of the words, tears threatening to fall. She whispered softly that sometimes choosing feels like losing, that even making a choice can bring pain, and Daniel nodded, understanding every nuance, because he had lived it. He had lost before, and the fear of losing again pressed down on him. She asked for time, a little time, to think and to understand what staying really meant, and Daniel agreed, though every second felt like a test of patience, the tension between them now unbearable, yet necessary, because they both knew the decision could not be rushed. It had to be real, it had to come from the heart. For the rest of the evening, Emily carried on as usual, preparing Lily's school lunch, helping with bedtime routines, smiling gently, but there was a softness, a fragility in her actions, a quiet distance that spoke louder than words. Daniel watched from the kitchen, trying to remain calm, trying to let her breathe, while his mind raced with fear and hope. That night, he stayed awake longer than usual, thinking about what he had said, replaying her reaction, wondering if asking her to choose had been fair, and yet knowing deep down it was necessary. Love was not something to hide, and hiding it could never bring peace. The next morning arrived with frost on the windows and a chill in the air. Emily came down as usual, smiling, acting normal, but Daniel noticed the hesitation in her step, the way she paused at the door, glancing back at the living room as if weighing her options silently, and he felt the same tension he had felt the night before, a combination of fear, hope, and longing. Over breakfast, their conversation remained careful, deliberate, small talk filling the gaps, but beneath the words, something unspoken pulsed between them, a quiet understanding that the choice was looming, the future uncertain, and the present full of potential. Every glance, every gesture, carried weight, because neither of them could ignore the feelings any longer. Daniel realized he had crossed a threshold, that asking Emily to choose had changed the dynamic forever. The simple act of honesty had shifted the balance. He could not go back to pretending she was just a babysitter, and he could not ignore the way his heart beat faster when she smiled, when she laughed, when she looked at Lily with love and care. Emily carried on with her morning duties, making sure Lily's hair was brushed, her backpack ready, her breakfast eaten, but there was a tension in the air, a quiet storm that neither could control, each of them aware that decisions and feelings were intertwined now, and the next steps would not be easy. As she waved goodbye to Lily at the bus stop, Emily hesitated, looking back at the house, looking back at Daniel, and Daniel caught her gaze, understanding in that single glance the struggle she was facing, the weight of the choice, the pull of her dreams, and the pull of something deeper, something real, something unspoken but undeniable. Part 2 ended not with answers, but with anticipation, the choice hovering over them like a cloud ready to break, the house full of quiet tension, and both hearts waiting for the next step, both wondering if love could survive fear, distance, and time, both feeling that the decision, once made, would change everything forever. The days after Daniel asked Emily to choose moved slowly but felt heavy. Each morning carried the same quiet tension, The house alive with ordinary sounds, yet charged with unspoken questions. Daniel tried to focus on Lily, on work, on routine, but his mind kept returning to Emily, to her smile, to the way she had laughed at Lily's jokes, to the small moments they had shared that felt bigger than they should have. Emily stayed as usual, attentive to Lily, kind, warm, but there was distance in her eyes, a subtle hesitation in her movements, as if part of her was already halfway gone. Daniel noticed it immediately, and it hurt more than he expected, because he had never imagined wanting someone so deeply and also being afraid of losing them at the same time. One evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Emily asked Daniel if they could talk, her voice soft but steady, and he felt a mix of hope and fear. He led her to the kitchen table where they always ended up, the light soft, shadows stretching across the walls, the quiet room suddenly feeling intimate, full of potential and risk. Emily began, her hands folded, her eyes downcast at first, then lifting slowly. She admitted she had thought about leaving, about the job in another city, about building a career, about starting fresh, and Daniel listened carefully, the words piercing but necessary. He knew this was part of the process, part of the choice she had to make. She paused, then continued, saying she had not signed anything yet, that she realized something important while thinking about the offer, that running had been her usual answer to difficult decisions, but for the first time she wanted to see what staying might bring, to face her feelings instead of avoiding them. Daniel's chest tightened at her words, hope and fear intertwining. Emily admitted that the connection between them was real, and that the thought of leaving made her chest ache, yet she also acknowledged her dreams, her future, and the life she wanted beyond this house. Daniel nodded, understanding completely, because he had lived loss, he had built walls, and he knew that love required freedom, not pressure. She asked if they could try, slowly, carefully, giving themselves time to see where the feelings could grow, without rushing, without expecting perfection. Daniel agreed, relief washing over him. He realized that love was not about forcing someone to stay, but about giving them the freedom to choose, and still feeling chosen in return. They spoke late into the night, quietly, about Lily, about their own fears, about what patience and honesty would mean, about creating a balance between Emily's dreams and the life they were building together. Daniel felt a sense of clarity he had not experienced in years, a fragile but real hope. Emily stayed in the house that night, not as a babysitter, not as someone caught in duty, but as a woman making a choice, a decision born of courage and care. The house no longer felt tense or empty. It felt like the beginning of something new, something delicate, something worth nurturing. Over the next days, their routine continued, but the air was different, lighter, yet full of anticipation. Daniel noticed how Emily lingered a little longer at breakfast, how her smile seemed more relaxed, how Lily sensed the change and laughed more freely. Daniel realized that allowing someone to choose had brought life back into their home in a way he had not expected. Emily's small gestures, making Lily's favorite pancakes, adjusting her homework, tucking her in with extra care, all felt like expressions of her choice, of her decision to stay, and Daniel watched her, feeling gratitude and love in equal measure. He knew the future was uncertain, but for the first time he felt ready to face it, because they were facing it together. One afternoon, Daniel found himself alone with Emily in the living room, the sunlight filtering through the windows, painting the room gold. He reached for her hand, tentatively, and she did not pull away, her fingers intertwining with his, a quiet affirmation that their choice was mutual, that both were willing to navigate the unknown together. They did not speak about forever, about promises they could not keep, but about the present, about honesty, about moving forward with patience, about letting feelings grow without fear. Emily smiled softly, resting her head on Daniel's shoulder, and Daniel realized that love did not need to be loud to be real. It could be gentle, quiet, and steady. That night, Daniel tucked Lily into bed and stayed for a moment longer, watching her sleep, feeling a sense of calm he had not known in years. He understood that by giving Emily the freedom to choose, he had created a space where love could exist, where trust could grow, and where his daughter could feel happiness again. Emily stayed in the kitchen, making a cup of tea, and Daniel joined her, the room quiet except for the small sounds of the house. They spoke softly, about dreams, about fears, about small victories, about laughter, each word building a bridge between them, stronger, steadier, and full of possibility. As the evening faded into night, Emily looked out the window at the stars, thinking about the choice she had made, thinking about how love could be scary and beautiful at the same time. Daniel watched her, feeling a mix of awe and tenderness, knowing that the next steps would not be easy, but they would take them together. Part 3 ended not with perfection, not with certainty, but with a decision that carried hope, a quiet promise that love could grow slowly, carefully, and without force. Daniel realized that life was fragile, feelings were fragile, but giving someone the freedom to choose made everything stronger, made everything real. The house, once empty and tense, now hummed with warmth, with the potential of a future built on choice, honesty, and quiet courage. Daniel and Emily did not know what tomorrow would bring, but they knew that tonight, For the first time in years, they were not alone, they had chosen each other, and that was enough to begin again.